Ms. Lerner, the topic of today's hearing is the IRS improper targeting of certain groups for additional scrutiny regarding their application for tax-exempt status. As Director of Exempt Organizations of the Tax-Exempt and Government Entities Division of the IRS, you are uniquely positioned to provide testimony to help this committee better understand how and why the IRS targeted these groups. To that end, I must ask you to reconsider, particularly in light of the fact that you have given not once but twice testimony before this committee under oath this morning. You have made an opening statement in which you made assertions of your innocence, assertions you did nothing wrong,
Illuminati,
assertions you broke no laws or rules. Additionally, you have authenticated earlier answers to the IG. At this point,
this shit is
I
real,
believe
bro.
you have not asserted your rights, but in fact have effectively waived your rights. Would you please seek counsel for further guidance on this matter while we wait?
Look at his face. These niggas talk about documents and fingerprints and shit.
I will not answer any questions or testify about the subject matter of this committee's meeting.
We will take your refusal as a refusal to testify. The witness and counsel are dismissed.
She getting paid.
The gentleman will state a point of order. Please wait.
Mr. Isa,
Throw me
Mr.
some money,
Cummings
America.
said
I
we
just
should
throwing
run this
it
like a
out.
courtroom,
Throw me
and
some.
I agree with him. She just testified. She just waived her Fifth Amendment right to privilege. You don't get to tell your side of the story and then not be subjected to cross-examination. That's not the way it works. She waived her right to Fifth Amendment privilege by issuing an opening statement. She ought to stand here and answer our questions.
How do I know they're gonna? How do I know to record this shit? Huh? Somebody out there has to pay.
Chairman, Mr. Cummings.
I first of all, with all respect for my good friend Mr. Gowdy, I said I'd like to see it run like a federal court. Unfortunately, this is not a federal court, and she does have a right, and I think, and we have to adhere to that.
Thank you. We'll pause for a moment. Ms. Lerner, I'll ask you just a couple of additional questions. Is it possible that we could narrow the scope of questions and that there are some areas that you would be able to answer any questions on here today?
I will not answer any questions or testify today.
Ms. Lerner, would you be willing to answer questions specifically related to the earlier statements made under oath before this committee?
I decline to answer that question for the reasons I've already given.
For this reason, I have no choice but to excuse the witness, subject to recall after we seek specific counsel on the questions of whether or not the constitutional right of the Fifth Amendment has been properly waived. Notwithstanding that, and consultation with the Department of Justice as to whether or not limited or use of immunity could be negotiated, the witness and counsel are dismissed. The clerk will please rearrange the seating.
Smoke a blunt and watch this.
For all the members on both sides of the dais, moment. Both, I think I speak for Mr. Cummings and myself. This is a committee that is investigating more than anything else the ultimate right of free speech and the First Amendment. So as we go on with the
I
rest
remember
of this
people didn't
hearing,
even pay attention to
I
this.
would admonish all of us to remember that it's not the First Amendment or the Second Amendment or the Fifth Amendment or the 10th Amendment in a vacuum. We have to respect them all. The gentlelady who has departed was entitled to assert her Fifth Amendment, although there's some questions about how it was done. There can be no question that we have to respect it. Additionally, that her assertion is not to be viewed or used during this hearing to make any determination, plus or minus, as to actions that were taken. We have the Inspector General with us today. We have other fact witnesses, and this committee has more than 10 additional witnesses that will be called either to hearings or to interviews already on the schedule. I believe that this committee has a long history of very few during my tenure of 12
My
years
email is
of these occasions, and we should not use this either for political gain or for any indication that it is anything other than somebody's right.
@gmail.com. Somebody cut the check.
It is the committee's work
All right,
to find
we
out.
have been watching this morning. You could hear a pin drop in that room when Lois Lerner said that she would not answer any questions with regard to this testimony or this hearing this morning. I want to bring Brett Baer back into this. And Brett, one of the biggest questions that we sort of started to talk about before we went back to watch that moment as it happened is the decision that was made to sort of start the ball rolling on releasing this news by the planted question that Lois Lerner answered. The big question, one of them, is who may have decided that it was time to start to unravel this story a bit and get it out into the bloodstream and start talking about it. Did that decision come from Treasury? Did it come from anybody at the White House or anybody involved? And the bigger question connected to that, why was the president isolated from all these conversations that we're now learning about with regard to this question?
I think that is a great question and one that they're going to continue to press on. Yesterday, Jay Carney said the White House had nothing to do with the planted question, but then conceded that White House officials talked to Treasury about how this was going to come out, when it was going to come out, and, the broad scope of the investigation, something that had taken 3 times of an evolution on the same question to get to what we heard yesterday from Jay Carney.
I knew about this day, man. Somebody told me to record this.
Inoculation from this, the fact that he was left out of the loop, became a little bit more strange when the White House Chief of Staff, we found out, knew, as did other senior staff members, back when the White House counsel found out. I think, if I could, just one thing. It was interesting to see that Lois Lerner did have an opening statement. She did say, her point. She said that she had broken no laws, no rules, no IRS rules or regulations, and made an opening statement, and then said she was taking the Fifth. And you heard Trey Gowdy, the congressman from South Carolina, object and say, wait a second, she is testifying. We now have to answer, she has to answer these questions.
Yeah.
And I think Congressman Issa did that a few more times and realized there was no getting any answers out of Lois Lerner today.
Yeah.
Brett, when Dan Pfeiffer was on the Sunday talk shows, he did all 5 on Sunday, a White House advisor. At one point, when talking about the IRS, he referred to this as a Republican playbook, and went on to say when they don't have a positive agenda, they try to drag Washington in a swamp of partisan fishing expeditions. Has that been the position of Jay Carney?
He has said that about other things. I'm not sure about the IRS scandal in particular. He continues to reiterate that the president is outraged and they're going to take action. He hasn't used that phraseology, I don't think, Bill. And just to that point, you heard Congressman Cummings today, the ranking member, say